Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the East Lindsey series. This is the biggest district in Lincolnshire, containing 188 civil parishes. Without further ado, here's today's offering. Welcome back to East Lindsey, everybody, on a very cold January morning. The last day of January, actually, so it's going to be February tomorrow. 2024 is going at quite a pace already. Now, you can see behind me there's some farm buildings. Now, that farm stands on the site of something extremely historic, which we will definitely be covering in this episode. And that is the site of a priory. You wouldn't know it, would you? To look at it. It's a farm building. There was a priory there? Yes, there was. Welcome to Stixwould and Woodhall. The East Lindsey series is sponsored by Gainsborough Cycles 01427 617 752. For all your cycling needs, this is your one-stop shop, located at 20 Ropery Road, Gainsborough, or online at gainsboroughcycles.com. There's a link in the description. Gainsborough Cycles, ask for Trevor Halstead. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like, and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Stixwould and Woodhall, Stigr and Hall Wood. In East Lindsey this week, we're in Stixwould and Woodhall, an area that bounds the River Witham to the west and the large village of Woodhall Spa to the south. It's made up principally of three settlements: Stixwould, Old Woodhall and Edlington Moor. The largest of these is Stixwould, and for such a small place, it's teeming with history. Situated 13 miles southeast of Lincoln, Stixwould lies on a piece of flat, high ground in the Witham fenlands. It contains numerous ancient woodland areas, because it's also on the edge of the Lincolnshire Limewoods. Its name is Old English and literally means Stigger's wood, further cementing its association with trees. Originally a parish in its own right, Stixwould was merged with Woodhall in 1987 to give us the current boundaries. Historically, Stixwould Manor was the property of Sir William Kite, a baronet, who squandered away his fortune. He sold it to Lord Anson a year before burning himself to death in his Cotswold Hills mansion. At that point, the Turner family stepped in. Stixwould owes much of its modern existence to Christopher Turner, who rebuilt many of the houses in the village, as well as the school and the church in the early 1800s. There's loads to talk about here, so let's get stuck in. Welcome to Stixwould, folks. We start at the Grade 1 listed Halstead Hall, a 15th or 16th century brick building on the edge of Stixwould. It's dark, but even in the daylight, you wouldn't be able to see much here. Here's some pictures of it. Halstead Hall is the oldest building still standing in the village, and it's built on the site of a medieval moat dating from around 1290. The current hall was probably built for the Welby family, but in 1778 it was purchased by the Turner family of Stoke Rochford. It's been restored three times, in 1852, 1922 and 1966. The house is built of bricks similar in type to those found at Tattershall Castle, not far away. The reason for that is all down to the area directly to the hall's west. Again, you can't see anything, but here we're driving through an ancient area of brick pits. This is where the clay was dug for the bricks that built both Halstead Hall and Tattershall Castle before being fired in kilns on Edlington Moor. Research also suggests that the clay from here was used for land drainage pipes too. There was also a Stixwold kiln, probably built in the late 1850s, and it was from there that the bricks were provided for almost every house, farmstead and other building in the village by the Turners. Well, let me tell you folks, there are no street lights in this part of the world, which is why that first section you probably couldn't see anything, but trust me, it's all there. Of course, with the time of year it is, and it being dark at this time in the morning, you can't really see anything yet, but I'm using that darkness to get from one end of the village to the other. I've parked up close to the abbey, the old abbey, Stickwell Priory, and I'm walking towards the church, which you might just be able to see the pinnacles of, peeking out into the morning sky over there. That's going to be our first landmark. This is a very short walk because Stixwold is a very small place. We're going to start with the church. We're going to work our way back towards the abbey and the duck pool and everything else it's got. Not a lot, to be honest with you. And then we'll head off down to the Witham at the end of this episode, because that has probably more than the village itself. So here we are in the village itself, and we're beginning at the eastern end on a small green where the main street meets the road to Edlington Moor. It was still dark, but there was just about enough light in the sky now to make out certain buildings. There are few properties anywhere in Stickwell Village that predate the 1830s, a lot are 20th century, but the oldest ones all date from the time when the Turners rebuilt the entire settlement. The old vicarage, which stands right next to the church, is one of the structures from the 1830s. Dedicated to St Peter, the parish church is Grade 2 listed, and it too was rebuilt by the Turner family. It was constructed in 1831 using materials that came from its predecessor, a building that dated from the middle of the 15th century. Not much remains from the earlier church, but it still retains its 16th century font. It also has some pew ends from the first older church, which have some interesting carvings, including a lady sticking her tongue out at the devil. There's a notable 13th century grave slab too, which can be found leaning against the tower. It's believed to have come from Stickwell Priory, and it's also believed to be that of the last abbess. The church is built in the Gothic style, consisting of a large chancel, a nave, a north porch, and an embattled tower with 4 pinnacles containing 2 old bells. The churchyard also features this 14th century cross. In 1851, the Turners built Stixwold School. It was then enlarged in 1894. The date stone over its porch, which has been moved from its original position, has the initial CT, a reference to Christopher Turner. Now, the 2 opposing ends of the school are private residences, and the middle section is Stixwold Village Hall. Here's the parish notice board outside it. Mark it off, folks, 176 to go. Now we've reached Abbey Farm, and this is where Stixwold Priory was once located. It was a Cistercian nunnery founded by Lucy, the Countess of Chester, in 1135. It was dedicated to St Mary and was another of the 9 that lined the banks of the River Witham. It was suppressed twice. The first occasion was in 1536, and almost immediately afterwards it was refounded by the Benedictine order, and nuns from Stainfield were moved in by the king. It was finally suppressed for good in 1539. Part of the Porter's Lodge still remain, and it's incorporated into a farmhouse dating from the early 17th century. Alice Cranmer, a nun at Stixwold in 1525, played a crucial role in the spiritual uncertainties of her brother, Thomas, the Archbishop of Canterbury, during the reign of Henry VIII, while he was awaiting execution in Oxford. The remains of some of the fish ponds that served the priory can still be seen, and speaking of ponds, directly over the road from Abbey Farm is the duck pool. I believe this wasn't one of the medieval ponds, but instead has always been ornamental. Check out how pretty this looked under the golden pinky hue of the late January sunrise. Okay, so as far as a village goes, that's pretty much it for Stixwold. It's a very small place, linear settlement, and not much to see really in the actual village itself. But Stixwold borders the River Witham out to the west, and if we go out there, there are at least two other things which we need to cover in this episode. One of them is an old railway station, and the other one is a ferry. If you go all the way to the end of Station Road, you'll be standing on the riverbank. This is the site of Stixwold Railway Station. In 1846, the Great Northern Railway purchased this land to build the 58-mile-long Peterborough to Lincoln line. It followed the course of the Witham. We've already seen 3 other stations on this former line: 5 Mile House, Southery and Bardney. Stixwold Station, like the others, opened in 1848. It had 2 platforms, a booking office and a signal box which controlled access to a small goods yard. The station master's house was next to the signal box. It all closed in 1970, leaving behind the platforms, one of which still has its station name board. The trackbed is now the Water Railway, part of Sustrans Route 1, and the station building and former signal box have both been turned into private residences. There was also a pedestrian crossing here that led to a chain ferry which crossed the Witham to Blankney Dales, giving passengers access to the North Kesteven Fens. The ferry could carry just one single vehicle at a time, but it was mainly for pedestrians. It was largely used by children going to school and by railway passengers coming from the opposite bank. The ferry ceased regular operation in the 1960s. In later years, the local postman was the only regular passenger, but fishermen also used it during the angling season too. So there you go, folks, that's Stixwold. But of course, this parish is Stixwold and Woodhall. Now, when we say Woodhall, we don't mean Woodhall Spa. That's a separate place altogether, and that will be covered at some point in this East Lindsey series. No, we're talking about the old parish of Woodhall. It's literally called Old Woodhall, the village, and we're going to drive through that to finish this one off. If you think Stixwold's small, wait till you see this place. Just before we go there, here's a bit about Jim Almonds. He was born and raised in Stixwold and lived possibly one of the most extraordinary and unusual lives of anybody from Lincolnshire. From fighting the Nazis in North Africa to advising Emperor Haile Selassie and sailing a homemade boat across the Atlantic, Gentleman Jim, as he was known, was one of the original members of the SAS. They were founded during the Western Desert Campaign of World War II, and they were a highly trained, largely autonomous unit that would parachute in under the dead of night, sabotage Nazi and Italian air forces from the ground, and escape out into the desert. Jim's daring wartime exploits twice earned him the military medal, not bad for a boy who left school at the age of 14. It was in Ghana where he embarked on an epic 3-month voyage across the Atlantic to Boston, Lincolnshire, aboard a boat he made himself. He designed the vessel in his head during 7 months solitary confinement as a prisoner of war. After all of his amazing adventures, he returned to Stixwold and lived in the house where he'd been born in 1914. He died in 2005, aged 91. His daughter, Lorna Almond's Windmill, chronicled his wartime escapades in her book, Gentleman Jim, the wartime story of a founder of the SAS and Special Forces. Later, Warrington-born actor Corin Silver played Gentleman Jim in a show based on the true story of the formation of the SAS. This bit didn't go as I planned. This is Edlington Moor, where the brick kilns for both Halstead Hall and Tatchell Castle were located. They dated back to about 1440 according to records. Edlington Moor was part of the old Stixwold parish and still forms part of the modern Stixwold and Woodhall. Via this you can get to Old Woodhall, but it seems the local roadwork teams in the area had other ideas this morning. The road to Old Woodhall was closed, meaning I had to abandon part of this drive. As a result, I was forced to go along what used to be the old boundary between Stixwold and Woodhall and completely miss out the village itself. I can tell you though, you aren't missing much. When Woodhall Spa was created a civil parish in 1889, it took chunks of the former Woodhall, Langton, Thimbleby and Thornton parishes with it. Woodhall was left with everything to the east of the Reedsbeck Road, until in 1987 it was amalgamated with Stixwold. Woodhall used to have a church dedicated to St Margaret. It was built in the 14th century and may have once been part of a moated manorial complex belonging to Woodhall Hall. It was declared redundant in 1971 and was demolished a year later. The moated site of Woodhall Hall, which is a scheduled ancient monument, can still be seen. Other than that, Woodhall's only other notable landmark is the 15th century Darwood House, a Grade 2 listed farmhouse. And that, folks, is it for Stixwould and Woodhall. Time for us to move on, and if you think this was a small one, wait till you see what's in store next week. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.